Okay, anyway, so moving on. So, and in that picture of judgment, fire, brimstone, smoke, you know, that's going to be kind of our image of judgment from now, pretty much from now on. Okay, so Abraham moved on from there into the region of the Negev and lived between Kadesh and Shur. For a while he stayed in Gerar, and there Abraham said of his wife Sarah, "She is my sister." Then Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent for Sarah and took her. Now this is right after Abraham was told that he was going to have a son through Sarah. Now previously, when he did this with Pharaoh, and we're going to find out later on that this was a common scheme. Abraham and Sarah did this everywhere they went, and so undoubtedly they did it more often than we've been told about. We have 2 incidents of them doing it, but clearly they did it again in other places. But anyway, the previous incident that we have recorded like this was with Pharaoh, and in that instance, you can make the case that Abram didn't necessarily think that Sarai was going to be important. He knew that he was going to be important, but he didn't necessarily think that Sarai was going to be important. At the time, the information that he had that God had told him, that God had given him, didn't necessarily indicate that the nation that was going to come from him had to come from Sarai's womb. Now he does know this. God has made that clear that it has to be Sarai. It's not going to be Hagar. It's not going to be some other woman. It's going to be Sarah. It's going to be his actual wife, Sarah. And yet he's still giving her away to the nearby king in order to avoid trouble. And this is only a month or 2 afterwards. You know, these stories of the fall of Sodom and Gomorrah, and then this right here, like, this has to occur. This happens within that time frame of when God told them that they were going to have a son within a year, and then them actually having the son. So this would still, and since of course the pregnancy itself would last 9 months, the conception would have had to have occurred within the first couple of months after that incident. So this is and I don't think it's happened yet. So this is very soon after this. This is like immediately after he leaves that area to get away from Sodom and Gomorrah. Immediately after that, this goes on. But God came to Abimelech in a dream one night and said to him, "You are as good as dead because of the woman you have taken. She is a married woman." Now Abimelech had not gone near her. So he said, "Lord, will you destroy an innocent nation? Did he not say to me, 'She is my sister'? And did she not also say, 'He is my brother'? I have done this with a clear conscience and clean hands." Then God said to him in the dream, "Yes, I know you did this with a clear conscience. So I have..." Cat, you need to go away. No. "And so I have kept you from sinning against me. That is why I have not let you touch her. Now return the man's wife to him, for he is a prophet. And he will pray for you, and you will live. But if you do not return her, you may be sure that you and all yours will die." So early the next morning, so at the soonest opportunity, Abimelech summoned all his officials, and when he told them what had happened, they were very much afraid. Then Abimelech called Abraham in and said, "What have you done to us? How have I wronged you that you have brought such great guilt upon me and my kingdom? You have done things to me that ought not to be done." And Abimelech asked Abraham, "What was your reason for doing this?" Abraham replied, "I said to myself, 'There is surely no fear of God in this place, and they will kill me because of my wife. Besides, she really is my sister, the daughter of my father, though not of my mother, and she became my wife.' Now later on, this sort of union would be forbidden, but as of now, it has not been. And when God had me wander from my father's household, I said to her," this goes all the way back to when they left Haran, I said to her, 'This is how you can show your love to me. Everywhere we go, say of me, he is my brother.'" So they've had this plan. They've been working this plan for 25 years at this point. This has been going on for a while. Because they left Haran when Abram was 75 years old. He's now about 100. So they've been doing this for 25 years. Then Abimelech brought sheep and cattle and male and female slaves and gave them to Abraham, and he returned Sarah his wife to him. And Abimelech said, "My land is before you. Live wherever you like." To Sarah he said, "I am giving your brother 1,000 shekels of silver. This is to cover the offense against you before all who are with you. You are completely vindicated." Then Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech, his wife and his slave girl. Abimelech, his wife and his slave girls, so they could have children again. For the Lord had closed up every womb in Abimelech's household because of Abraham's wife, Sarah. Now, this couldn't have gone on for too terribly long, because this incident fits in between the time span of when God told them that they were going to have a son, and a year later when they had the son, and probably before the conception. So this could only have happened like within a month or two. So I don't know how they knew that all the wombs were closed. It must have been a period of time, so that, I guess after a month or two, maybe they knew that no woman was getting pregnant who should be. I'm not exactly sure how long. I mean, they would have obviously had more pregnancies going on than we are familiar with today. In our culture today, women spend most of their lives trying to avoid becoming pregnant. That was not the case back then. So I don't know how long it would have taken them to realize that no woman in the household was becoming pregnant. It could not have been too long, because there isn't enough time in the time frame for this to be occurring for this to be going on for too terribly long. Now the Lord was gracious to Sarah, as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah what he had promised. Sarah became pregnant. So this seems to be happening after the Abimelech incident. And bore a son to Abraham in his old age, at the very time God had promised him. Abraham gave the name Isaac to the son Sarah bore him. When his son Isaac was 8 days old, Abraham circumcised him as God commanded him. That was back in Genesis 17. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. Sarah said, "God has brought me laughter, and everyone who hears about this will laugh with me." And she added, "Who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne him a son in his old age." The child grew and was weaned. And on the day Isaac was weaned, Abraham held a great feast. This is a little bit different than our weaning processes today. He could have been as old as a young toddler, or 4 or 5, when this happened. But Sarah saw that the son whom Hagar the Egyptian had borne to Abraham was mocking. So if Isaac, let's say Isaac is 5, it's a little old by our standard. This would be pretty old to still have been breastfeeding. But let's say he's 5, and so that would make Ishmael 18, 19 years old. So he was a teenager. He wasn't really a man yet, but he wasn't a little boy. He wasn't a little kid, like 10 or 11. He would have been 16, 17, 18 years old by now. So you have the older teenage son mocking the little toddler son, 4 or 5 years old maybe. So Sarah said to Abraham, "Get rid of that slave woman and her son, for that slave woman's son will never share in the inheritance with my son Isaac." So the feud is still between Sarah and Hagar. The feud was not between Abraham and Ishmael. The feud was between Sarah and Hagar. The matter distressed Abraham greatly because it concerned his son. But God said to him, because Abraham Abraham and Ishmael, from what I can tell, did get along. Abraham liked Isaac, loved Ishmael, loved Ishmael, wanted Ishmael to be the son through whom he would have this promise. God eventually told him, no, it's not going to be Ishmael. But Abraham wanted it to be. We read that back in Genesis 18. 17, I guess, that Abraham wanted it to be Ishmael. The matter distressed Abraham greatly because it concerned his son. But God said to him, "Do not be distressed about the boy and your maidservant. Listen to whatever Sarah tells you, because it is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned. I will make this son of the maidservant into a nation also. because he is your offspring." Early the next morning, Abraham took some food and a skin of water and gave them to Hagar. He set them on her shoulders and then sent her off with the boy. She went on her way and wandered in the desert of Beersheba. When the water in the skin was gone, and I don't know how long that would have taken, she put the boy under one of the bushes. Then she went off and sat down nearby, about a bow shot away, for she thought, "I cannot watch the boy die. He must have been suffering from heat stroke or having some other ailment that was causing him to lose health rapidly." And as she sat there nearby, she began to sob. Normally you would think that he would have held out longer, since he was the young, strapping teenage male, and she would have been at this point a middle-aged wife. But he must have gotten some sort of fever or something that made his condition perilous. God heard the boy crying. So I don't know if I don't know. There's a footnote down there saying she or he. I don't know which one of them. Maybe they both are. Maybe she's weeping. Maybe he's making moaning noises because he's delirious or in pain. I'm not really sure. But they're both in bad shape. God heard the boy crying, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, "What is the matter, Hagar? Do not be afraid. God has heard the boy crying as he lies there. Lift the boy up and take him by the hand, for I will make him into a great nation." Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. It was probably always there, she just hadn't noticed it before. So she went and filled the skin with water and gave the boy a drink. So he needed water badly. He was dehydrated somehow. He was having some... And I don't know why he suffered this. You would think that she would suffer this condition first. You would also think that she would have given him the water in the flask to begin with, so that he, I don't know, so that he would have been nourished. I don't know. I don't know how it got to be this way, but somehow or another, he fell ill from the heat faster than she did. God was with the boy as he grew up. He lived in the desert and became an archer. While he was living in the desert of Paran, his mother got a wife for him from Egypt. That's where she was originally, so that's where she's going to go. That's where she was probably heading back to when she first ran away. That's what's normal to her. That's what's natural to her. At that time, Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his forces, said to Abraham, so now we're back to Abimelech again, "God is with you in everything you do. Now swear to me here before God that you will not deal falsely with me or my children or my descendants. Show to me in the country where you are living as okay, let me say that again. Show to me in the country where you are living as an alien the same kindness I have shown you." Abraham said, "I swear it." Then Abraham complained to Abimelech about a well of water that Abimelech's servants had seized. But Abimelech said, "I don't know who has done this. You did not tell me, and I only heard about it today." So someone out there was messing with Abraham's wells, and Abraham wants it back. And he's telling Abimelech about it, but Abimelech didn't know. So Abraham brought sheep and cattle and gave them to Abimelech, and the two men made a treaty. Abraham set apart 7 ewe lambs from the flock, and Abimelech asked Abraham, "What is the meaning of these 7 ewe lambs that you have set apart by themselves?" He replied, "Accept these 7 lambs from my hand as a witness that I dug this well." So that place was called Beersheba, because the 2 men swore an oath there. In my footnotes it says, Beersheba can mean well of 7 or well of the oath. As the treaty had been made at Beersheba, Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his forces, returned to the land of the Philistines. Abraham planted a tamask tree there in Beersheba, and he called upon the name of the Lord, the eternal God. And Abraham stayed in the land of the Philistines for a long time. The land of the Philistines was along the coast, and they're going to be there for a long time. They were actually not native to the area. They had come there from the seas. They were some of the maritime peoples who had gone off to the islands of the Mediterranean at some point in the ancient past, probably after the Tower of Babel incident. And then and then had apparently some of them had come back and had settled in. Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness! Had settled in the area of on the western, well, the coast of Israel, on the coast of the Mediterranean Sea, and that's pretty much where they would be. They're going to be thorns in Israel's side for a long time. In fact, the word that we use today, Palestine, to describe that area of the world actually derives from the word Philistine. Sometime later, God tested Abraham. He said to him, "Abraham." "Here I am," he replied. Then God said, "Take your son, your only son, Isaac," so we're not even counting Ishmael anymore, "whom you love, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains I will tell you about." Early the next morning, Abraham got up and saddled his donkey. He took with him 2 of his servants and his son Isaac. When he had cut enough wood for the burnt offering, he set out for the place God had told him about. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. He said to his servants, "Stay here with the donkey while I and the boy go over there. We will worship, and then we will come back to you." We're not really reading any insight into anybody's thoughts here. We're just reading the account of events. We don't really know what Abraham is thinking. We don't know. I mean, he didn't obviously tell anybody else what he was been told to do. He's doing it, though. He's doing it as God has commanded him. But we don't know what's going on in his mind from this account. Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac, who would have been a teenager at this time, and he himself carried the fire and the knife. As the 2 of them went on together, that knife that he's going to use to cut Isaac's throat, and he himself carried the fire and the knife. As the 2 of them went on together, Isaac spoke up and said to his father Abraham, "Father?" "Yes, my son," Abraham replied. "The fire and wood are here," Isaac said, "but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham answered, "God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." And the 2 of them went on together. When they reached the place God had told him about, Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood on it. He bound his son Isaac. Now, Isaac didn't fight back, even though he undoubtedly would have had the ability to, being a young teenager at this time. But he didn't, so he was clearly clued in on what was going to happen now by this point, and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Then he reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. The angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham!" "Here I am," he replied. "Do not lay a hand on the boy," he said. "Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son." So he was going to do it. That hand was up and it was coming down. But God never actually intended for him to go through with it. He was testing him to see if he would. Later on, Jesus Christ will be put to death on this in this same area. And God will not withhold his hand from finishing through with that sacrifice. But he isn't making Abraham go ahead with it here, go through with it here. Abraham looked up, and there in the thicket he saw a ram caught by its horns. I'm assuming that ram had probably been there, just like that well of water that Hagar saw after her eyes were opened probably was there to begin with. She just didn't see it. This ram probably had been there already. Abraham either just didn't see it or ignored it because his sacrifice was Isaac as far as he knew. He went over and took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called that place, "The Lord will provide." And to this day it is said, "On the mountain of the Lord it will be provided." The angel of the Lord called to Abraham from heaven a 2nd time and said, "I swear by myself, declares the Lord," because there's no one greater for him to swear by, that because you have done this, and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you, and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as the sand on the seashore. Your descendants will take possession of the cities of their enemies. That's what Moses' people were supposed to be doing. Remember how I said, put yourself in the mindset of that original audience of Israelite men who are hearing this. They're the ones who are supposed to take the possession of those cities. And through your offspring, all nations on earth will be blessed, because you have obeyed me. Now, we know today that's referring to Jesus Christ. Now, these people who would have first been hearing that didn't know that. But that's what we know. They thought they were that all nations on earth are going to be blessed because Israel is going to be such a great nation. We know today that it was specifically because Jesus Christ had come from Israel and he would provide salvation for sins for all mankind. That wouldn't have occurred to Abraham, Moses, Moses' hearers, or anybody living at that time. And Abraham returned to his servants, and they set off together for Beersheba. And Abraham stayed in Beersheba. Sometime later, Abraham was told, Milcah is also a mother. That goes all the way back to their beginning when we were still introducing the characters in the family records of Terah. Terah became the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Haran became the father of Lot. The name Abram and Nahor both married. The name of Abram's wife was Sarah. The name of Nahor's wife was Milcah. So this is his sister-in-law. Milcah is also a mother. She has borne sons to your brother Nahor. Uz, the firstborn, Booz, his brother, Kemuel, the father of Aram, Kesed, Hazal, Fildash, Jidlaph, and Bethuel. Bethuel became the father of Rebekah. Milcah bore these 8 sons to Abraham's brother Nahor. Those would be his nephews. His concubine, whose name was Rumah, also had sons, Teba, Gahem, Tahash, and Makkah. Give me just a second here. I gotta make a switch over there. Sarah lived to be, I want to go ahead and say one more thing, and I'm going to be done for this video. Sarah lived to be 127 years old. She died at Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And Abram went to mourn for Sarah and to weep over her. His son Isaac would have been 37 or so at this time. Then Abraham rose from beside his dead wife and spoke to the Hittites, the sons of Heth, as my footnotes say. He said, I am an alien and a stranger among you. Sell me some property for a burial site here so that I can bury my dead. The Hittites replied to Abraham, Sir, listen to us. You are a mighty prince among us. Bury your dead in the choicest of our tombs. None of you will refuse you this tomb, will refuse you his tomb for burying your dead. This is an ancient bargaining account between two parties trying to haggle over a deal. Then Abraham rose and bowed down before the people of the land, the Hittites. He said to them, If you are willing to let me bury my dead, then listen to me and intercede with Ephron, son of Zohar, on my behalf, so that he will sell me the cave of Machpelah, which belongs to him and is at the end of his field. Ask him to sell it to me for the full price as a burial site among you. Ephron, the Hittite, was sitting among his people, so he's right there. He doesn't, they don't need to talk to him on Abraham's behalf because he's right there listening to this. And he replied to Abraham in the hearing of all the Hittites who had come to the gates of his city. No, my lord, he said. Listen to me. I give you this field, and I give you the cave that is in it. I give it to you in the presence of my people. Bury your dead. Or sell. That word can also be translated as sell. But we have to have, it's not going to be quite that easy. We have to have a negotiation process. We have to protect the integrity and save face for both of these men. Again Abraham bowed down before the people of the land, and he said to Ephron in their hearing, "Listen to me, if you will. I will pay the price of the field. Accept it from me so that I can bury my dead there." Ephron answered Abraham, "Listen to me, my lord. The land is worth 400 shekels of silver. But what is that between me and you? Bury your dead." Abraham agreed to Ephron's terms and weighed out for him the price he had named in the hearing of the Hittites, 400 shekels of silver, according to the weight current among the merchants. So Ephron's field in Machpelah near Mamre, both the field and the cave in it, and all the trees within the borders of the field, was deeded. It was deeded to Abraham as his property in the presence of all the Hittites who had come to the gate of the city. So they have witnesses, plenty of witnesses. Afterward, Abraham buried his wife Sarah in the cave in the field in Machpelah near Mamre, which is at Hebron, in the land of Canaan. So the field and the cave in it were deeded to Abraham by the Hittites as a burial site. And they're going to end up burying 3 generations of patriarchs and matriarchs in that cave. That's going to be enough of that for today. I'm going to have to edit these videos. I didn't do a very good job breaking these up into cohesive chunks, but I'll do that later.